North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has arrived via rail in Russia to meet President Vladimir Putin. They are expected to discuss an arms deal as Russia faces a Ukrainian counter-offensive. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has arrived in Russia for talks with the US, warning that he should not agree to an arms deal with Russia. The Kremlin said that the fully fledged visit would cover bilateral relations, the situation in the region and in the global arena as well. The Kremlin also said that there would be a comprehensive discussion with President Vladimir Putin as the Korean leader arrives in Russia on his private train. At the moment, exactly where Kim is arriving, the situation remains unknown, but Kim has left Pyongyang accompanied by top arms industry and military officials and the foreign minister of North Korea as well. He reached Russia and stepped off the train onto a red carpet to be greeted by a Russian delegation as a brass band played on. He also met Alexander Kozlov, Russia's Minister for Natural Resources. Here's a report.
In typical fashion, North Korean state media confirmed Tuesday that leader Kim Jong-un had in fact set off on a rare trip out of the country to visit Russia's Far East. His private train was headed to an unconfirmed destination for what the Kremlin described as comprehensive discussions with Vladimir Putin, amid warnings from Washington they should not trade weapons. The Russian president gave little away to reporters who asked him why he was going to the Vostochny Cosmodrome on Tuesday, saying he had his own agenda there. US officials have said arms talks between Russia and North Korea are actively advancing and that Kim and Putin were likely to discuss the war in Ukraine. Weapons are one thing Pyongyang has at its disposal, but it and Moscow both deny North Korea could supply arms to Russia, which has expended vast stocks in more than 18 months of war. Kim could offer artillery rounds from North Korea's large stockpile, but questions about the ammunition's quality may limit the overall impact, military analysts said. Washington and its allies have expressed concern at recent signs of closer military cooperation between Russia and nuclear-armed North Korea. Kim's last trip out of the country was also to meet Putin in 2019. North Korea is one of the few countries to have openly supported Moscow over the Ukraine conflict, and Putin pledged just days ago to, quote, expand bilateral ties in all respects in a planned way by pooling efforts. If he rides a train, he could command the entire country from anywhere, receive all faxes and emails, and access all reports because all communication facilities are available. So for Kim Jong-un, it can feel as comfortable as his home. In the train, there's a room with a bed and a meeting room, a reception room, a dining room, a bath, and other convenient facilities. At least this is a space Kim Jong-un uses alone. Except for the meeting room, which is accessible to other people, no one else can enter his rooms.
The Ministry of National Defense believes that Kim Jong-un probably entered Russia early this morning. In particular, considering the large number of military personnel traveling with him, we are closely watching whether negotiations on arms, trade and technology transfer between North Korea and Russia will possibly proceed.
I don't follow these events. I am interested in other things, Europe, US, and their relations with us. To be honest, I don't really follow those. I am maybe more interested in China and Japan.
North Korea is dear to me because I study their language. They are good and welcoming people. I used to work in the repair industry and met with comrades from North Korea very often. They are very good people. Why not be friends with them?
I think they will have some sort of business talks. I don't have anything more to say, unfortunately.
For its war in Ukraine, that those discussions are actively advancing.
Arms talks between Russia and North Korea are actively advancing. That's according to US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan on Tuesday, after reports that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un plans to visit Russia. Sullivan also sent a stern warning against the possibility of supplying Moscow with arms for use in Ukraine.
Providing weapons to Russia for use on the battlefield to attack grain silos and the heating infrastructure of major cities as we head into winter, to try to conquer territory that belongs to another sovereign nation, this is not going to reflect well on North Korea, and they will pay a price for this in the international community.
Sullivan told reporters the latest analysis showed Kim expects discussions about weapons to continue, including at leader level, perhaps even in person. The Kremlin said early on Tuesday it had nothing to say about statements by US officials that Kim plans to travel to Russia this month to meet President Vladimir Putin for arms talks. If the trip happens, it would be Kim's first known visit abroad in more than 4 years and the first since the coronavirus pandemic. On Monday, Russia's Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said the two countries are discussing the possibility of joint military exercises. Shoigu had visited Pyongyang in July to attend weapons displays that included North Korean ballistic missiles banned by the UN Security Council. At the Tuesday news briefing, Sullivan also took the chance to critique Russia's war efforts in Ukraine.
I think it says a lot that Russia is having to turn to a country like North Korea to seek to bolster its defense capacity in a war that it expected would be over in a week, that in September of 2023, it is going to North Korea to get munitions to try to continue to grind out on the battlefield in Ukraine.
He also pointed out the US imposed targeted sanctions in mid-August to deter arms deals between North Korea and Russia, and called on Pyongyang to stick to its public commitments to not supply weapons for a war that is killing Ukrainians.
Let's give you a broad bird's eye view of what this visit could mean geopolitically and strategically, both for Russia and for North Korea. And for that, let me bring in my guest today. I'm joined in by Ben Aris, who is the editor-in-chief of BNE. Many thanks to you, Ben, for joining in. France's foreign ministry has said that Kim Jong-un's visit to Russia shows Moscow's international isolation following its own invasion of Ukraine. Now, how do you weigh in on the assessment by France's foreign ministry?
Well, it's true in so much as that Russia hasn't got many good friends to turn to, and even amongst what it calls the friendly nations, there are not that many that are willing to supply it with arms. For example, African states, I mean, many of them have thrown their lot in with Russia, but sending weapons, sending missiles, sending particularly artillery rounds to Russia is seen to be beyond the pale for most people. And yet here, North Korea is probably one of Russia's best friends, tightest friends. In the UN, votes to condemn Russia's military action in Ukraine. North Korea voted to condemn, to reject the motion in all 5 of the votes. And there was only 5 countries that did that. Everyone else, including China and India, chose to abstain. So I think it's significant. And the issue of getting more arms, particularly artillery rounds, is one that's pressing for Russia. It's producing a lot itself, some 2 million rounds a year, and it's firing a lot. But if this is a long war, it's going to need more. And the two sides are waiting for each other to run out of ammo. So, I mean, putting these extra supplies in place is probably important.
Ben, Pyongyang has heavily invested in military technology so far, but very less on agricultural practices. Do you think food supplies could also be high on Kim Jong-un's agenda?
Absolutely. This is a quid pro quo, that the Russians are interested in tapping into North Korea's vast stocks of arms and munitions. But the other side of the deal is that they will source food and also high-tech, some technology, things like satellites for missile technology, for nuclear submarine technology, and that's what they want out of the bargain. And so this is why they're coming shopping, and they actually have a mutual interest, because North Korea is dependent on Russia for food, and Russia is swimming in grain at the moment after 2 record harvests.
Also indicating, Ben, that Russia's ally Armenia is not quite happy with the war in Ukraine, because that's what's taking away its own supply of weapons, which was to come from Russia, something it also needs to protect itself against Azerbaijan. Russia is also not happy that Armenia is planning to sign up to the International Criminal Court. Does that indicate that Moscow needs Pyongyang even more than before?
I don't think it needs, in so much as North Korea has very little to offer other than arms. As far as the tensions there are within the CIS and the wider Eurasia Economic Union and even the BRICS, those are continuing to work their way out. I mean, it's all very new, and the relationships are being sorted out. In Armenia's case, that they were relying on Russia for security in the Caucasus via the Collective Security Treaty Organization, and that didn't work because they were attacked by Azerbaijan, and normally Russia should have come to their defense and hasn't done. And even the tripartite peace deal that was brokered by Russia between Azerbaijan and Armenia hasn't worked very well. And so now Pashinyan, the president there, he's signaling very strongly that he's had enough. And so they just started joint exercises with US troops in Armenia for the first time ever. I mean, very small number, but it was clearly a gesture that Armenia is looking maybe to leave or look further afield for friends. The French have been very active in those talks. India's been very active in those talks. And so Putin's got a lot of problems. In a way, this trip must be reassuring for him because North Korea has no friends and only Russia is its friend. So the bonhomie between the two leaders is going to be very strong. But like I say, the North Koreans have little to offer except for these artillery shells, and so it's a very pragmatic relationship, shells for food.
True, but the Armenia angle remains very significant, as has been highlighted by you. Ben, my last question, considering Russia is a member of the UNSC and there are sanctions imposed on North Korea by the Council, can UN actually stop Russia if the country does manage to strike a deal with North Korea to supply Russia with weapons?
No, I think there's nothing they can do. I mean, North Korea has been sanctioned for forever, and now Russia has the same sanctions, and all the sanction levers have been used. And there's no way, conceivably, that they can punish North Korea any more than it's already been punished. So I think that the threats by Sullivan that there'll be consequences are pretty empty, in so much as for Russia too. I mean, they've thrown the whole bag at them of sanctions, trying to wound the Russian economy, and it hasn't really worked. I mean, Russia's economy is doing pretty well, all things considered, and it's looking forward to more than 2% growth this year. And North Korea too. I mean, with Russia as a steady trade partner, it doesn't really have relations with anybody else. But having Russia as a trade partner is significant because Russia can supply it with a lot of what it needs in terms of inputs, commodities, food, oil, energy, and tech. And the tech is probably the scariest thing. By giving North Korea this sophisticated tech, rocket tech, to put missiles into the air, then that's destabilizing for the whole region.